Hello everyone, I'm Greg, the Grape City Product Manager for ComponentOne, and in this video, I'm going to walk through and discuss all of the things we've added in the 2021 V3 release of ComponentOne. This primarily includes .NET 6 and Visual Studio 2022 support across the product, but we also have existing developers using .NET Framework in mind, so we've added some useful enhancements there. We've added some new features for FlexGrid, FlexChart, and other WinForms and WPF controls. Our Blazor Edition and data services continue to grow, and we're finally releasing our WinUI controls with licensing. And after I show you everything, I'll show you how you can update to the latest version. So let's get started. I will start out with our WinForms edition. As with the past few releases, we've been continuing to port our .NET Framework controls to .NET 5, re-engineering where we can while keeping the same APIs. In this release, we've introduced a few new .NET 5 controls, including TreeView Grid, Scheduler, and Gantt View. Plus, we've introduced .NET 6 packages for every control that has already been ported to .NET 5, including these new ones. .NET 6 has long-term support by Microsoft, which according to them means 3 years of support. For ComponentOne, .NET 6, we will support it for at least 3 years, and the length beyond that will be based upon usage and the feedback that we get. This 2021 V3 release is the last update that will include any new features or controls for .NET 5. We will support the libraries as they are for another year. We expect the .NET 5 to be a stepping stone to .NET 6, and the migration from .NET 5 to 6 is seamless, so we don't see much reason for anyone to stick with .NET 5 for more than a year. And at this point, we have ported more controls to .NET 5 and 6 than not, so it's easier to share what remains. So the controls that we still have port to .NET 6 for WinForms in 2022 include Chart 3D, Dashboard Layout, Editor, Multi-Select, Tag Editor, Gauges, List, Radial Menu, Sizer, Tile Control, and the Word Library. In addition to .NET 6 support, we've made sure the components work with the latest version of Visual Studio. We support a basic level of designer support for .NET 6, as you can see here on the right. The runtime support is 100% there for Visual Studio 2022 and the .NET 6 supported controls, but you may find that some of the designers are not as rich in .NET 6 as they were in .NET Framework, and this gap will be closed throughout the next year. We don't see this break in designer support happening again with future versions of .NET, because it was the jump from .NET Framework to .NET 5 where Microsoft rewrote the designer in .NET Core, so we essentially had to rewrite everything from scratch. And with hundreds of controls, there's only so much time we have to do everything. And this new designer will be the basis for all future versions of .NET 5 in the foreseeable future. We've also been able to add some ease of use enhancements to FlexGrid and other controls. The biggest new feature is the column bands feature for FlexGrid. Column bands allow you to visually group columns together, even when the data is not hierarchical. They help you organize your data grid columns or visualize a hierarchical relationship between columns. And these can be quickly designed in .NET Framework using the Visual Studio Designer. This feature also exists in .NET 6, but the designer is not there, so code only for the time being. FlexGrid's advanced column bands feature also allows you to display a record as multiple rows now. This is useful when displaying many fields in a compact view without horizontal scrolling. And this feature is similar to our ASP.NET MVC and Wijmo multi-row data grid. FlexGrid users will find our new selection statistics sample quite useful. This sample takes advantage of existing features in FlexGrid's API to deliver a commonly requested feature from Microsoft Excel, where the footer of the grid shows statistics for the selection, like the sum and the count. Specifically, this sample uses FlexGrid's aggregation functions, like count, average, and sum, to showcase the statistics when a range of cells is selected. You can find it in the sample called Selection Statistics when you install WinForms Edition, or you could browse it on GitHub. FlexChart now supports a runtime toolbar with common options like chart types, palettes, export, print, axis, and legend settings. This toolbar lets you easily put chart configuration in your user's hands. So this first version is considered beta, and later we will expand this with ribbon support and more features. The toolbars can be added using the control Smart Tag at design time. We also now have more palette choices available for FlexChart. The new palettes are inspired by Color Brewer 2 and are grouped into the following categories. There are sequential palettes, which are best used to show ordered data that progress from low to high, or from high to low. And we also have diverging palettes, which give an equal emphasis to mid-range critical values and extremes at both ends. Light colors for mid-range and dark colors for the extreme and low values. And lastly, our FlexPivot chart has a few enhancements. It now supports grouping legends using the legend groups property. So this provides an additional context so that it's easier to compare similar data points in the chart. The pivot chart also supports a context menu configuration for runtime. So similar to the toolbar in FlexChart, this context menu lets your users select different options like changing the chart type, apply stacking, copying, hiding the legends, titles, grid lines, etc. Plus, you can take advantage of the new diverging and sequential palettes. And of course, you can customize this context menu to add additional functionality, or you could disable some of the features. Next, let's move on to WPF. So just like WinForms, we now have WPF .NET 6 packages for all of the previously released .NET 5 packages. Plus, we've released a few new .NET 6 versions for Scheduler, Multi-Select, and List View. Our List View control is a reworked version of the C1 list box with an updated Fluent design. And listed here are the remaining controls that will be ported to .NET 6 during 2022. So this includes Chart 3D, Flex Sheet, Gauges, Gantt View, Word, Expression Editor, Flex Report, Flex Viewer, Input Panel, Rating, and Themes. Along with .NET 6 support, we've also added Visual Studio 2022 support across all our WPF controls. For this, we've improved the design time experience for our WPF controls by taking advantage of the new Suggested Actions menu. This can be opened by clicking the little light bulb on the control from the design surface. And this gives you quick access to key properties and features, just like the smart tags do in WinForms. Not only can you set properties, but you can also perform more complex actions. For example, to implement the filter row of FlexGrid, it requires special XAML markup rather than just setting one property. So by clicking this Enable Filter Row link in the Suggested Actions menu, the XAML will be automatically generated and added for you. And of course, you can use our WPF controls with the XAML Hot Reload feature of Visual Studio as well. The XAML Hot Reload feature is where you can modify the XAML while the application is debugging to see instant changes and improve your development time. Across the rest of the WPF edition for .NET Framework and .NET 6, we've added the following enhancements. Gantt View can be exported to Microsoft project files. Rich text box can be exported to Microsoft Word through using our Word library. Dock control can prevent certain tabs from being docked or floated, giving you the ability to really limit the user's actions in certain scenarios. TreeView supports on-demand loading, as demonstrated in a new sample we've included. And FlexChart supports break-even charts. Break-even analysis is used to calculate marginal costs, and this technique is widely used by production management and management accountants. And in case you were wondering, this is the current status of our .NET Framework support across the ComponentOne products. So, as you know, .NET Framework will be supported as long as Windows is shipping. Microsoft has announced that they're ending support for .NET Framework 4.5.2 on April 26, 2022. So as a result, in 2022, ComponentOne, we plan to include new .NET Framework versions for our WinForms and WPF controls. And the 4.5.2 controls will then enter maintenance mode where they will no longer receive new controls and new features after about a year or so. Now, if you're working with XAML and building desktop apps, you may be interested to know about the latest WinUI platform by Microsoft. The 2021 V3 release includes the first official version of our WinUI controls for developing modern Windows desktop applications. WinUI is a successor to UWP, and we're bringing our native XAML UI controls to this platform. Technically speaking, this platform is known as the WinUI 3 framework, and the ComponentOne WinUI edition includes a fully featured FlexGrid, our powerful data grid with flexible cell customization and high-performance virtualization. Modeled after Microsoft Excel, FlexGrid offers many features, including freezing, filtering, sorting, grouping, cell editing, pop-up editing, hover row selection, you name it. FlexGrid is designed to aid large data sets with features like grouping and aggregation and on-demand virtual mode. And some additional controls that we have in the WinUI edition include calendar and accordion that help round out your toolbox. And we plan to continue growing this platform as the development community continues to grow. The WinUI edition has a lower introductory price because it's basically just FlexGrid and a few other controls. So now is a great time to get in on the edition. Next, let's move on to the web platforms. For ASP.NET MVC and Blazor, we now support .NET 6 and Visual Studio 2022. For Blazor, we are now shipping 2 versions, .NET Core 3.1 and .NET 6. The benefit of switching to .NET 6 is that you will no longer need to manually add the references to scripts in the JavaScript files for every control library. Plus, with .NET 6, you can enjoy the other benefits that Microsoft unveiled recently, such as the faster loading of WebAssembly applications. And in this release, we focus on adding drag and drop functionality across the Blazor suite of controls. Plus, we also incorporated a new DataFilter UI control for advanced Blazor data grid in list view filtering. The new DataFilter UI provides e-commerce-like filters to accompany any extensive data collection. Filtered data is easier to analyze and allows you to focus on specific information. So you can filter on criteria such as brand name, price, and time, connect to any data-aware controls such as our data grids, lists, tree views, and charts. You can auto-generate and the filter panel UI from the data source or create it manually. We also have a new menu control. Our new Blazor menu lets you create a complete menu. It's a basic, essential control that's missing from the Blazor platform. You can add deep nested horizontal or vertical menus to your application for easy navigation to different parts of your app. You can utilize the template features to customize the headers and items to provide a rich interface. As for the drag and drop support, our Blazor FlexGrid now supports column and row reordering by drag and drop interactions. The allow dragging property can be used to enable the movement of columns, rows, or both. And the column reordering is enabled by default. The drag and drop functionality also extends to our Blazor TreeView component. Users may reorder the nodes to any desired level by dragging and dropping. The allow drag drop property can be used to enable node reordering. And this feature also supports event-driven dropping between 2 tree views using the onDrag event handler. And we've ensured that this client-side drag and drop behavior works well in both server and WebAssembly applications. Lastly, today in the product lineup, let me run through the enhancements for our data service components. In our last release, we introduced a new product bundle, which combines our WinForms UI controls with our data service components. It's the perfect bundle of everything that we offer that's useful for just WinForms development. As you may know, we have Studio Enterprise, which includes everything under the Grape City ComponentOne umbrella. But that price point may be too much for some developers, considering if you're only interested in WinForms development. So our new data service components are useful for any and all .NET platforms, and especially on desktop. So we wanted to offer a middle price bundle that just has the WinForms and the data components for $12.95, which is better priced between the $9.95 and $14.95 price points. And in this release, we've improved the data services with enhancements for data connectors and data engine. We have a new JSON data connector, which supports creating, updating, and deleting from JSON data sources. And with Visual Studio integration, you can quickly get connected to a JSON data source before binding it to a UI data grid. And we've added support for time series functions in Data Engine. These special functions are useful in business calculations where period to date time-based summaries are needed. So for example, the QTD function could be used to generate the financial statement from the start of a quarter to a specific date. These functions can be applied to a range or filter expressions. So that's about it for the 2021 V3 release. In addition to these highlights that I've shared, we also provide bug fixes and minor enhancements to all the products, which you can check out in the change logs or the release history in the documentation. The quickest way to update is that you can download the C1 Control Panel web installer from the Grape City website, Or if you already installed it months ago, you can just launch it to get the latest updates. So locate the tile within the panel for whatever platform you want to install controls for, and then in the version dropdown, select the topmost latest version, in this case, the 2021 V3 release. Then you can optionally select install the samples. And if you choose to install the samples, they'll get installed to your documents folder. And once you do that, click proceed. And that's it. And that will complete the installation. We also publish all of the controls for .NET 4.5 and higher to NuGet.org. So it's possible to get the updates through NuGet without using this web installer. So that about wraps up this video today. If you have any questions ever about the ComponentOne product, feel free to shoot us an email at the ComponentOne-product-team.us@grapecity.com. Thanks for watching.